Hi everyone, welcome. I'm down here in my wormery, and in my wormery I like to keep my newest stuff off to the right and the oldest stuff nearing completion off here to the left. And one of the things I've been doing lately, since not all my systems fit neatly on this shelving system over here, is that I've been using placeholders for certain systems. And this object right here actually is one of the placeholders representing one of my older systems. This thing represents what had been the outdoor worm bag, and it has since turned into an indoor worm bag. And it's been down here for quite some time. I've got some stats on the system here, and the system's also already been placed out onto the bench over here. So the previously outdoor worm bag is now 287 days of age, and initially the outdoor portion of it lasted 174 days, and the indoor portion of it has been technically foraging, because I've not given the system any bedding over the past 113 days since it's been in here in the basement. It got really loaded up with a lot of leaves before it got bought in here, so there was a lot of bedding when we first started, but in order to get a nice clean batch of vermicompost, they've not been getting any bedding now for quite some time. So today I'm kind of hoping that we might be able to transition them to the next phase. So after composting and foraging, usually I turn to the next step of trying to get the worms out of their environment, usually migration. And I believe we might be getting ready for doing that today. But we won't know till we get in there and check it. So I'm going to get a glove on, and we're going to see how these little guys are coming along, possibly moving them into a new container and initiating the migrations out of their finished casting. So let's get to work. So now if we decide that foraging is the way to continue, I've got coffee that we could blend in there, a food that we know is not going to leave all kinds of leftovers and debris within the system. However, if we do decide to move them into a plastic tub and initiate the migration of the worms, then I'll have to run upstairs to the refrigerator and get some more substantial, juicier foods with which we can create a horizontal migration feeding zone. So I don't really know what to expect. I didn't peek. Ooh, pill bug. Gotta love the roly-polies. For some reason, the roly-polies just don't seem to last very long in my systems, but every year, like I've been doing for the past few years, after I bring in the after I make the outdoor system an indoor batch of worms, sometimes I get a little infusion of worm bin helpers in the form of isopods and other little creatures. So now I think the main thing that was sort of holding out in here as leftovers were the rinds of some cantaloupe melon that had been fed a couple feedings ago, and we collected as many of them as we could last time and sort of dropped them down into the middle, onto which we placed some coffee, I think it was. We've even got, wow, okay. We've even got some leftover of the last feeding. Stuff that had been frozen and I thought was ready to be fed to the worms, but certain things just refused to cooperate. And what I think we're seeing here is a little bit of growth occurring in these Brussels sprout leaves. I thought that this stuff had been placed in here frozen, and I usually assume that by being frozen the stuff will cease to grow, but I think what I'm seeing here is little growths coming out of, yeah, right there. That's definitely a little something attempting to grow, I believe. So it's something you see sometimes with various types of materials that you might feed to your worm bin. Potatoes are the one thing that really stands out in my mind as a food substance that definitely likes to pick up where it left off as far as continuing to grow. Seems like they've kind of ripped into the fairly large pieces of cantaloupe melon rind that was in here. And I really thought that that would be the only thing we'd encounter as far as leftovers go. I really didn't expect that after 11 days since the last check-in that we would still find pieces of Brussels sprout, but, you know, certain things do like to start growing once they get into this nice, lovely, fertile medium. So, in the past, I've even gone to the extent of fishing out materials like this from worm bins in which the stuff just continued to try to sprout and grow and refuse to transform into worm bin food. But it is kind of nice to see that the worms are actually attempting to work the stuff down, portions of it that are not attempting to grow. You know, I'm definitely liking the idea of getting out of the bag and getting them into a plastic tub, and perhaps even just letting one more round of foraging continue. Now see, here I am talking myself out of moving them into a tub, because the foraging certainly does appear to be working well in this container. It's just that at some point in the past I had told myself that if we stay in this container for too long, it's just going to inevitably lead to a environment that's a little bit too dry for the worms, and that might be a bad thing to allow to happen. But the system definitely hangs on to its moisture content a lot better than I had expected, and I think that's got a lot to do with the fact that we actually took that sheet of plastic that was resting out here on top of the plywood when we first came in here, and we put that on a couple check-ins ago, and it was like night and day in terms of how nice the material managed to stay in here in terms of the moisture content. And then it's just these little bits of Brussels sprout leaves. You know, I am starting to think that we're going to just let this system continue. Really quick though, I'm going to extract these food substances that we collected in our excavation, and you can tell it certainly isn't much. Just little bits of this and that, especially this kind of looks like it might be something pretty big, but it's probably no more than just a little scrap of paper as far as nutritional value goes. And I'm even tempted to just grab the Brussels sprout pieces that are refusing to break down and maybe return them to the freezer so that they actually do maybe freeze through this time and perhaps have a better chance at being broken down next time they get placed into a worm bin. So yeah, you know, I don't know if it's a strength or a weakness, this whole thing about trying to keep different options open and not forcing myself to go down one path or another, but I am starting to get the feeling like perhaps the best bet here would be to just kind of stir through the whole system really quick, see if there's anything else like that we can collect up. And this does not, oh, this actually looks like a piece of my glove. Is my glove falling apart, or maybe this is from some other previous check-in where the glove shattered in the process of working on the system. So, all right, this is just like an exercise of indecisiveness, I think. But I think I am going to just stick to keeping them in this system for one more round. Let the foraging continue. As far as the stuff that we just removed, I'm just going to keep that out. And we're just going to turn to the coffee as the food to give them today, just in case they're running low. And I'm not going to concentrate it in any one spot. I'm going to place it into the system and sort of blend it in. So it's not like concentrated in any particular space. And at this point, at 287 days of age, it does seem like we're going to be on the brink of the system hitting 300 days of age by the time we initiate migration. But it does seem like letting the system go just a little bit longer, as is, might be okay. Because I guess consideration number one is that I'm not in a particular rush, nor am I desperate for the castings that are going to get harvested from this system. And the other consideration is just the general appearance of the system in terms of its health. It seems like if there were more moisture, perhaps the worms would be a little bit chubbier, but we've been deliberately attempting to let this system kick off some of its moisture so that we get nice, crumbly, smooth flowing stuff like this versus having a bunch of stuff that's sticky and muddy and clumping. And, you know, I think as far as the material's quality and consistency, it's got to be among the best I've seen. It's just so fine and so perfect. So let's leave it at that. You know, I'd love to hear people's feedback on whether or not they think I'm doing the right thing here. I like to think so. I'm sure if there were other factors in play, then I might choose differently in terms of what to do here. But I think we're in good shape as far as just letting the little guys continue. There is a fair bit of this and that in the system, and I certainly don't expect that in one interval between feedings that we would find a huge difference in terms of little sticks like this vanishing or anything like that. But you know, we just removed what traces of food were actually in here still from previous feedings, and that actually could sort of drive the attention of the worms towards working more and more of the system's contents down better than it is already. Not to say that it's bad, it's just still has some stuff in it that the worms can certainly make use of. And I am fairly certain that the next time we come in here, I could probably just do so by coming in prepared with everything required to get the migration of the worms initiated. So I doubt that there's much that would derail me from taking that approach next time we come in here. But once again, I don't want to feel obligated to do anything in particular if it's just not right to do so. So we'll wait and see. So that's it for the check-in, everyone, with what had been the outdoor worm bag version 6, now an indoor system, still foraging technically, and kind of got some of this weird leftover foods swapped out for coffee just to keep them nourished and supplied with foodstuffs. And perhaps somewhere closer to day 300 we'll come in here and we'll find that it's time to get them into a bus box, set up a horizontal migration for them, and get them moved out. So that's it for the check-in, everyone. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Bye now.